Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Dr. Donna Marks is a psychologist and author of several books, including the award-winning Exit the Maze. Donna tells us that it all boils down to whether we choose to live in love or in fear. Her insights are a combination of decades of professional experience and the result of more than a few personal bumps in the road. Her inquisitiveness has led her on a path of personal and spiritual healing that she shares with us today. Please welcome Dr. Donna Marks to Bump in the Road. Donna, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. I am delighted. And my story is kind of lengthy, so I'm going to give you the condensed version. I was born into a family that had some addiction problems, and it had a profound effect on me. And I always swore that I would never be like that, and wound up being like that because I didn't know how to choose differently. But even as a small child, I did have a spiritual connection. I think it's how I coped. Even though we didn't go to church or where there was no religion, I just felt this sense of connection to some type of spiritual guide, and which I thought was God. And it helped me. It helped me a lot until I got into my teens, and then I kind of started experimenting with different things myself. And the minute I did that, I was off and running. So one of the reasons I wrote the book, The Healing Moment, is because I recognized as a child that there are two parts to every one of us. We have our human being who's trying to understand life and needs guidance and direction and certain essential things to turn out okay. But even more importantly, we have a spirit that resides within us where there is infinite wisdom, infinite comfort, love, and light. And once we learn how to access that, or it's always there, it's not hard to access, but learning how means being willing to listen to that voice of love, then our life will take an entirely different direction, away from fear, away from pain, away from grief and suffering, into remaining like a child in wonder and awe of life and all that it offers.
What are some of the steps to learning to listen to yourself?
Well, for me, doing the wrong things and not being happy was the first step, recognizing that there must be a better way, a happier way. I started off by getting into recovery from addictions and got a lot of therapy and did a lot of things. But it wasn't until I recognized, and I was told from that same voice that I didn't love myself, that I really questioned what I had been doing my whole life, because I thought I had been loving myself. I thought that, eating and shopping and having fun and, bathing and, doing the next right thing, kind of, so to speak, was loving myself. But it's much deeper than that. It's really making a conscious effort to make healthy decisions on every level of our life, and to, most importantly, to be the kind of person that we want, to be the kind of love that we want. And so the steps are to recognize that we're not happy, and then to listen to that internal guidance, and to be around people also who are on that path, because we do need the reinforcement from listening to other people and being encouraged by other people who are also on the path.
I hate to think unhappiness is our first step, but I think it is for all of us.
Unfortunately, yeah, because people don't question things until they are. They just kind of go along. Someone can go along perfectly content or thinking that, they've got the world by the tail, so to speak. They have a great career. They have, the family. They have all the things that are supposed to make you happy. but down deep, they're still searching, and maybe they're searching in all the wrong ways, like I was, and they would get momentary relief from running a marathon or having, champagne or later drugs, or a relationship. But really, there's that hole inside that keeps growing when we're filling it with such emptiness and empty things. And I'm not condemning those things or saying they're wrong. I'm just saying they don't really give you the ultimate happiness, which doesn't come from out there. It comes from within.
That's so true. And I look at all the different types of addiction across our society. Certainly, workaholism is one of them.
Yes, that's a huge problem, especially among people who are very successful. They feel that they have to work, 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 and there's no balance of rest time, quiet time, time for family, time for children, time just for oneself to reboot and recharge. And it gets reinforced, especially in certain professions where you have billable hours. Now, I think some people have to work excessively due to necessity, with the economy being so challenging right now. People have to work. Families, both people have to work, and single parents are working 2 and 3 jobs sometimes. So it's not always because someone's doing it to self-medicate like a workaholic. Some people have to work excessively out of essential, just to put food on the table and pay the bills. So there is a difference.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. Our world rewards a very linear left brain approach to life. Go to the right school, get the right degree, get the house, the dog, the car, get married, whatever. But life is really not linear that way. And, I see it all the time with a bump in the road that throws people just off course totally. And it's usually the best thing that ever happened to them.
That's true. Those curveballs are really often putting us on an entirely different path, and taking us off one that was empty and unfulfilling in many ways onto often we get hit with pain, but it's often in our best interest because it's an opportunity on the other side of that pain to have a whole different mindset about life.
What is the biggest bump you've hit?
Well, I wouldn't say there's a biggest. There's been many. And so, I mean,
I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah, my childhood was probably the hardest thing I've ever done because I didn't know how to cope and I didn't know how to deal. Children just can only do what they can do, and they have very limited ability to assimilate what's going on when it's not right. And so, I think that was probably the most difficult part of my life. As an adult, I was able to search and figure things out. So I've had a lot of bumps in the road. I've had breast cancer. I've had multiple divorces. I've had my home and my business catch on fire. So there's been a lot of things that were difficult. Some floods, hurricanes that did a lot of damage. So there's been many things, but there's always been hope, and I've always been able to navigate my way through that. So I guess I would have to say childhood was the biggest and hardest bump in the road.
Cancer's a bump too. What did you learn going through cancer?
Well, it was really a mixed blessing, I would say, because right before I was diagnosed, I've always eaten healthy, been healthy, exercised. So I had been actually training or just finished a marathon. And so I was in bed. My daughter came into the bedroom and she was crying. And I said, "What's wrong, honey?" And she said, "I just had a bad dream that you died, and we were putting you in the ground." She was 4 years old. So I was like comforting her, and I said, "Well, you can see I'm here and I'm okay." And then comforted her, and she started getting dressed, and it hit me that was a message. I really believe we get messages. I believe that if we pay attention, there's always we're always getting sourced through that loving energy in the universe. So I and just kind of when I was going down the stairs, I just kind of intuitively put my right hand on my left breast, and I felt a very large lump, and I knew right away that something was very wrong. And fortunately, I had a doctor who was a breast surgeon, and to make a long story short, a week later, I had a mastectomy of my left breast. Um, so I learned, to really to listen to that voice inside that said, something is wrong. And also, I learned to kind of push through. The operator who said, "Oh, don't worry, 90% of these are nothing." And then when I had the emergency mammogram, I said, "Please tell me, please show the doctor right away." And then when I didn't hear anything, I learned to call his wife and be proactive. And then, unfortunately, after that, I was prescribed opiates for the pain, and I learned not to take those without great caution. I did not necessarily get addicted, but I had been sober for quite a while, and I think that really precipitated some really dangerous behavior and thinking on my part when I resumed having those kinds of substances in my brain. So that's something I learned way before it was so apparent to so many people how addictive opiates are and how you don't even realize you're addicted, how dangerous of a drug it is. And so I share that a lot when I'm teaching about addiction and when I'm helping people. Be very, very careful if ever you have surgery and you have to be on opiates.
One of the things
Those
you
are a
said
couple of
about
the takeaways from that experience. A lot. I can tell you a lot more.
It's interesting. For years, I had lymphoma, and I went through 6 years of treatment with it. And I became, very active in the cancer community, very aware of health. And one of the things that I thought might be was that cancer is a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people. And I thought, gosh, if 40 to 50% of us are going to have a cancer diagnosis, maybe that's actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. I was wrong. I think at best, maybe 12% of the people use cancer as a portal into changing their life for a more congruent, authentic life. I think most people just want to go back to the status quo. And you can't go back, but in trying to go back, they're just stuck.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about the whole medical community and how we treat illness. I personally think that almost all physical and mental illness is addiction in disguise. People, go, "What?" But when I present them with the facts, which I have in my other book, One Addiction, One Cause, One Solution, to Exiting the Maze. If we look at alcohol, drugs, trans fats, sugar, nicotine, these things that are consumed in excess are the main causes of our leading major medical illnesses and causes of death. Stroke, heart attack, cancer, liver disease, kidney disease. These diseases are usually diabetes too. They're usually related to people who have abused their bodies with those substances. Not always, I'm saying usually, a huge percentage. And so someone, develops obesity or diabetes or heart disease. There is certainly genetic components to it, but when we look at what they're putting in their bodies, what they're putting in their lungs, what they're putting, in their bloodstreams, what they're doing to their brains, they almost always have consumed these substances, alcohol, sugar, drugs, trans fats, to the point of causing injury to those very precious and vital organs. So same thing in the mental health problems in the family that starts like with me in childhood from the dysfunctions and abusive situations that went on that my parents would have never done had they been sober and of sound mind. So my message to the world is we need to wake up. We have been hijacked, and then when we get these problems, rather than the doctor's saying, let's look at what you're doing. Let's look at what your habits are. Let's look at your behaviors and how we might correct this from the inside out. What are you trying to medicate here? What is your underlying pain? What are you really unhappy about? And heal from the inside out. We won't need to be medicated with so many pills for everything. And we can start to teach our children very early on that your body is a sacred temple. Within it resides a beautiful spirit and a soul. And I want you to learn how to honor and treasure your being, every part of your being. And that's where we'll have the shift in consciousness. That's where we'll shift from the quick fix to the heartfelt and loving oneself and others consciousness.
That's really interesting. And I think you're right. I think that's a big part of it. But we're surrounded by sugar. Caffeine, I think, is incredibly addictive. It's ubiquitous. I mean, how in the world, particularly with a child, do you isolate them from everything that's so-called normal in the world around them?
Yeah, I don't I don't want to isolate anybody from anything because that is not a solution. That's a temptation. So, but children are very wise. I have two beautiful little grandchildren right now, and the 2-year-old, she's so wise, and so they just want to learn, and they are open, and they also haven't lost that spiritual connection yet. So it's at this age that we're teaching her through, like, you can Google right on the internet pictures for children of their body parts, and and there's also like games called Doctor where they learn what their heart is and their lungs and their stomach and all that, and teach them how important their feelings are in their bodies and their emotions and all of this. That this is to be treasured and honored and valued, and that trust their feelings and their intuition, and teach them how to tune into that and to think, and explain to them why, show them what sugar is and how processed it is, and what it does to that thing in their brain and how it makes them want more, and how important their organs are, and the foods that those organs need, fruits and vegetables and proteins, and this can be taught to children from the very early on to make good choices, because their tummy and their heart and their brain are so happy with those good choices, and that kind of thing. And then with their emotions, when they talk about being angry or sad, to encourage them to get that out, teach them how to do that, how to use words to get those feelings out, and hugs for comfort, and that it's okay to be angry, but we don't throw a toy at your brother. You don't use those ugly words. You say, I'm angry because, and you get it out. And when you're sad, it's okay to cry when your dog dies or when your friend won't talk to you. And the minute children do those things, they're over it. They don't have this piled up toxic energy inside of them that converts into illness. They are able to be over it. They're resilient, and it's done. And then okay, can I go play now? And so we're the same way. We just have got so much baggage within us if it hasn't been processed, that we don't realize we're the same way. One of the things I teach in the book is how to get back to that place where you wake up in the morning, what are we doing today, world? And you go to sleep at night tired and peaceful, and you love your life. Those are the steps that I talk about in the book, that help people to, no matter what you've been through, no matter what mistakes you've made, any mess at all can be turned into a path that takes you to the miracle of love.
You talk about emotions. I think that as a society, we're emotionally illiterate. I saw a Harvard study recently that named all these different emotions, and it really drilled down into things like anger and whatnot. And it was astonishing. I could not have come up with that many descriptions of an emotional spectrum, and it really made me realize that we need to educate ourselves, get in touch with how we're feeling, to really understand what our bodies are saying to us.
Yes. I think that after decades of working in the field of psychology and being a therapist, I really like to condense things to their simplest form. And I don't think emotions are complicated at all. And I don't think there's a lot of them. I think there's two. I think there's love and fear. And if you're feeling good, you're having the love, you're connected to the love emotion. If you're not feeling good, fear is at the root of it. It could be resentment, it could be anger, it could be guilt, but really, when you analyze it further, it's fear. Fear that it's not okay to make mistakes, fear that I'll never be forgiven, fear that I'm not going to forgive, fear that the world is crazy and insane and nothing's right anywhere, anytime, da 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 da. All the judgment and everything is really based on fear. When we are in a state of love, we trust, we feel good because we're sharing goodness with other people. When we are in a state of love, even when unfortunate things are happening, painful things are happening, we embrace that as part of life, just like nature embraces bad things that happen to it as part of life. And it, burns away the negativity, and we can grow and really transform ourselves through those fires and floods and whatever else might, droughts or whatever else might happen. And so we always have that choice. Before we started the interview, you said, how did you mentioned I did a lot of writing during COVID. The moment the news came on, I had no fear at all. I said, well, that's interesting. It's very interesting. I'm going to get up and get dressed and go to work like I always do. And if people want to come in to keep their appointments, I'm here. And if they don't, that's okay too. And I did that throughout the whole situation. Some people chose to only, do Zoom, and some people chose to come in, and life went on. And then some people stopped therapy altogether. So I just used those hours to do my writing. And then I totally transformed my whole practice from the regular therapy into just a concierge practice. So all kinds of miracles came out of it, not because I'm so great or anything, but because I listened to the voice of love rather than the voice of fear. That's the only reason.
I really like
I
that
listened to the
love-fear.
guidance.
Yeah, no, I love
Uh-huh.
that love-fear dichotomy. I think you're spot on about that. What does a concierge practice look like?
Well, I only work with a few people at a time, and they sign up for 1 month at a time. And it's usually for people who have very specific things that they want to accomplish: family healing, or maybe they have an addiction, or maybe they've gone through some type of trauma. So I'm available to them 24/7 during the time that they hire me. They come in for intensive therapy. Not everybody wants to come in a day or two for a whole day or two, but they can if they want to just kind of do that internal healing of the past and cleanse out all the toxic energy uh, through different types of therapy that I use. It might be art therapy or gestalt therapy or hypnotherapy, or sometimes just, asking the right questions will pull the plug on the pain. And then there's an additional individual therapy. They also have access to a webinar once a month that I do. And I'm constantly writing and posting things on my internet, so they have access to the private members of the internet service that I offer. And it's deep, intensive healing. It's comparable to what someone would get in treatment if they went to a residential treatment facility for addiction or mental health, except they get a lot more one-on-one. And if they need recovery from an addiction, I actually take them to meetings and introduce them and get them involved in a recovery community, because often people will go to treatment and then they get out of treatment and they go to recovery meetings and they don't know anybody, and it's very uncomfortable. So the method that I use, they don't need me by the time we're done, because they've got a really good support system with its new way of life and new way of thinking and new way of being outside of the recovery that I've helped them to achieve. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
what concierge is. They also can invite anybody into the therapy that they want whether it's family or a partner or children. Sometimes I work with C-suite, so it will be the executive component of the system, so that everyone understands what's happening and how to help best facilitate whatever the goals are that they're trying to achieve.
That's another book right there. One of the things you bring up is trust. Mary Neal said when she went through her near-death experience regarding spirituality that she went from hope to trust. And I find that to be such a profound statement. And you talk a lot about trust as well. What is trust?
Well, it's knowing that you're going to be okay no matter what, I think, is the bottom line. But there's trusting. A lot of us trust, but we just take it for granted. We trust that the sun is there and the moon is there, and that the groceries in the grocery store, that even if you're homeless, there's certain things you trust without even realizing it. Those basic essential planetary functions. But what I'm trying to help people to understand is that the most important person you will ever trust is yourself. Because once you learn to tune in to that voice of love and be guided from that place, you're not living in fear anymore. You're not overriding good common sense. You're making sound decisions. And then when bad things happen, which are beyond your control, you trust that some good's going to come out of it, that you're going to be okay, and that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, and you latch onto that light rather than the darkness that precedes it. So trust is it's a concept that is really important, because so many people are living in fear and they don't even realize it. They're afraid of everything. They're constantly obsessing about the next fearful thing, and their brain is just going round and round and round. I call it like a bingo machine. And, B52, oh, how am I going to pay my bills? B56, I-19, it's like, it just never stops. And so, and it's what, me, rather than, right now I'm okay. Everything's fine right now. There are solutions to these problems. If I'm feeling bad, maybe I could do something for somebody else. Maybe I have a neighbor here that needs a little help. Maybe I can run an errand, or maybe I can stop thinking about my fears for a few minutes and just be the love that I want and do something for someone else. So maybe I could just smile at someone, or maybe I could make a call, or, oh, I don't really want to see that relative. Well, maybe I'll just give them a call and see how they're doing, rather than they never are there for me. I mean, so we just kind of reverse all the things, all the negative thoughts into positive actions. And then we learn to trust that things aren't so bad after all.
And I think taking action is one of the keys, getting energy into your life. And even if you start off and you go down the quote unquote wrong path, I don't think there are wrong paths, but you will figure it out once you have some movement.
You'll figure it out if you want to figure it out. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And that's a movement in itself. And if you don't want to figure it out, you won't. One of the things I've learned very clearly from working with thousands of people is there are those people who want to figure it out, and they will. And we will do it together. And there are people who come and then when I'm saying, but if you do this, then, if you do A, then B is going to happen. If you keep doing C, then, E is definitely going to keep happening. And they won't allow themselves to experience that enlightenment. They insist that either I'm wrong, or I'm not objective, or I don't get it, or whatever, and they stay stuck. And therapy or books or anything for that matter, including your own spiritual inner self, which has all the answers, if you don't listen. The Course in Miracles, which I've been a student of for many years, there's a phrase in there: there's no amount of evidence that can convince someone of something they do not want to know. And it's very uncomfortable to work with someone who just absolutely will not open up to the possibility of where they're stuck and why they're stuck. and do something about it. They just won't let that moment of that healing moment, the title of my book, that healing moment to come in. Because if they are suffering, or if they are stuck, or if they are in pain, if they would just for one moment open up their mind to the possibility that they're not allowing themselves to see what it is, then they cannot be helped. But if they will, for just one moment, open up to those answers, they will know. And then they can be free. This is really common in people with addictions, or people with personalities that are calcitrant, I call it, to seeing things differently for whatever reasons.
I think that mental flexibility to see things differently is part of what makes life interesting and fun.
Absolutely. And also that keeps us from getting bored, because as projects, if I'm the project and I want to keep growing, then, I will never get bored. There is always some better way to be, something new to learn. And as a flowering spirit and human, we can always keep growing. And that's very exciting.
Thank you for listening. I hope you'll support this podcast by becoming a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. It's your support that makes this podcast and website possible. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.